Welcome to another segment of ACRP TV. Today, our spotlight is how decentralized trials can elevate sites. And we're going to talk today with an expert about this, about terminology, fear in the marketplace. A lot of people don't understand this, starting with patients, but also practitioners. There's some wariness out there. This is not the most cutting edge, early adopter industry for some obvious reasons. But decentralized clinical trials, I think just the term puts chill into the hearts and spirits of some people out there who feel that sites are going to go away. So I want to talk to our guest about this today, Thakur, who's the Chief Growth Officer at Medable. Sans, thank you so much for joining us, first off.
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be here.
Now, you and I have talked a few times offline. Let's start off. You made a good point earlier on before we came on air here. Decentralized clinical trials, it's a problematic term. What are we talking about? What message are we sending with that term that maybe isn't quite correct?
Well, I think that when people hear decentralized trials, what they hear is moving away from the center or moving away from what we've always done. When I think what we actually mean as an industry is making trials more convenient for patients, making them more appropriate for patients. And that can mean many different things. And most of the time, it means a hybrid of what's worked before and some of the new useful tools that make life just a bit easier in the new.
And you mentioned patients, because you and I talked about this a little bit offline too. There's definitely a learning curve here for patients and practitioners. COVID obviously had this COVID catalyst has sped things up. People have done telemedicine appointments, say early this year, where they probably wouldn't have before. So it was under desperate measures. But telemedicine has generally performed pretty well. Do you think the industry needs to do more to educate patients and practitioners about the benefits of decentralized trials or hybrids when they're appropriate and when they're not?
As an industry, we're still very young. The market itself is not fully defined. We use the term decentralized clinical trials because it's just the term that the FDA is most frequently used and has become the common term. I expect, though, that as this segment matures, the language that we use will mature as well and reflect the intents of all the innovations that are occurring. I think that should be acknowledged, and that in itself is education, right? It makes people understand, okay, it's still evolving. Everyone has a role to play. We just saw today some comments from the FDA commissioner, around a number of the trials, how the data from decentralized trials is proving to be effective, transparent, and easier to use than trials in the past. And I think that is one of the most critical success factors that we have to offer the industry. Data for sites, for stakeholders, for patients is the most important thing. It qualifies, it outlines the outcomes that we care about. The clinical outcomes, the safety outcomes as part of clinical outcomes, but also the operational ones and the financial ones that helps our industry run. So I think to answer your question, we expect that those words will shift as our understanding of this market shifts.
That will be really helpful. And in hindsight, if we'd gotten this terminology right at the beginning, it might have saved a lot of heartache. Last point, you and I also talked offline about, stressing that sites are not going away here, the brick and mortar sites. And you made an interesting point when we were talking earlier, again, offline, about how sites are going to remain a critical point of care option. Talk about that and their value there.
There's never going to be a replacement for the human touch. Patients will find it easier to do some things that we offer. They will find it easier to connect in their homes, to get consented, to be recruited in many ways, to get a televisit. But for the large majority of clinical trials, there are some diagnostics, there's some tests, there's some evaluations that always need a site or location for the appropriate care to be made. What we do at companies like Medable is we create greater connectivity with the home. We enable a patient to connect more quickly to a site or connect more quickly to physician. We allow for data flows to happen, workflows to happen more efficiently. We actually feel like we elevate a site experience My vision for this is that sites are leveraging these hybrid tools, these virtual tools, because it's the best thing for the patient and the therapeutic condition. And then they're able to focus their time on the human interaction, on the other complexities in an already very complex protocol. So we actually find ourselves working with thousands and thousands of sites in our program right now. And the sites then can pivot their efforts, perhaps sometimes where they really want to be, outside of some of these complex technical workflows that something they don't need to focus on.
Well, excellent. I think hopefully you brought some clarity to us today and are helping to clear away some of the fog and mist surrounding this issue and this term. This has been our ACRP TV Spotlight on how decentralized trials can elevate sites. We've been speaking with Sans Thakur, who's the Chief Growth Officer at Medable. Sans, once again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Michael. It's been great to speak with you.